Welcome back to the Land Journals. This is the first episode in the Geology and Geography series, where landforms and rocks, outcrops, and deep time all go into my sketchbook. I'll share with you some of my favorite ways to chronicle the landscape so that it tells the story of how it came to be and how we experience it. This is bedrock material, both physically and artistically speaking, and you'll notice that many of the landscape features, the way we see and record them, seems identical to the way we see other things in our environment, starting out as rough forms, suggesting shapes, movement, gesture, and like geological processes, our drawings and paintings take the time they take, both in the field and in our sketchbook studios at home and in camp. Journaling the land as we see it, engage with it, and describe it in art and writing helps us to differentiate regional qualities. We don't need to use the language of geological science to communicate complex processes. Our sketches will do that just fine. But I do like to research why the land looks like it does and spend some time writing little explainers to go with my sketches. For my Christmas week adventure, I traveled to eastern North Carolina to the Croatan National Forest, one of the last intact coastal forests remaining east of the Mississippi. I was surprised, for such a flatland terrain, how geology and geography were so important for understanding how and why the coastal forest looks and functions the way it does. This is a landscape of sandy soils, tall loblolly and longleaf pine, oak and scrub, and the architecture of the forest is directly the result of the wetlands, the old dune complexes, and ancient fossilized marshes that lay beneath it all. On a day hike to the Island Creek area, I encountered great exposed banks of marl stone, fossilized marsh and shell banks that gave contour to the trail I was hiking on and that contained the creek and its great beautiful bald cypress coves. Within the marl stone are fossil oysters, clams, mussels, and other shellfish species in a gritty matrix of gray marsh, sand, and silt, all frozen in time for millions of years. I used my go-to field sketch techniques to capture my direct observation of the marl stone banks. I added scientific information later at camp, where I had the opportunity to do some research on what I'd found. The Island Creek Trail was so beautiful that I did a more structured piece in watercolor and ink back at camp. You can see how I used the wet pigment lifting trick in the deep blue reflections of the sky in the creek. On another hike later in the week, Amos and I headed over to the trail system on the Neuse River at the Flanders Beach area within the Croatan. Hurricane Florence and other strong hurricanes over the past several decades have eaten away at the bluffs here, revealing how the land has been submerged or high ground over the last hundreds of thousands of years. Fossil clay banks still held impressions of huge trees that grew here, and the gray-blue clay contrasted beautifully with the orange of ironstone and yellow sand. This was a perfect place to do a diagram to show those layers. I sketched using the basic technique of gesture drawing, capturing forms and diagnostic features of the layered bluff. Diagrams can be simple, or, as I did later, incorporate into a landscape painting, keyed out as I did, with color swatches and soil descriptions. Using reference photos and my field sketches, I composed a rough diagram that also included masking fluid to hold space for those dangling tree roots. Using perspective to show how the bluff recedes into the distance all the way up the river, I focused on using a limited palette of orange, yellow, and gray-blue to illustrate the diagram of geological process. Slump zones of tumbled clay, sand, and iron-rich subsoil was assembled at the base of the bluffs, and I used these pyramid-shaped piles to offset the horizontal layers of soil, sand, and clay. For detail work, I switched to a fine-tipped black ink pen and added areas of focus and detail using contour line and hatching. For the jumbled beach area, I added ink with squiggles and spirals to suggest a mixed-up area of several soil types, rock and clay. Try varying the amount of pressure you apply to the pen. Use it as you would a pencil and lift the tip to lighten the ink. Press harder into areas you want to emphasize, like how the rocks are shaped, how the bluff is eroded out in sections, and how the cliff top overhangs the beach with a heavy surface of trees and scrub. This is a sketch, so keep working fast. Don't dwell very long in one patch or another. When you find yourself worrying the details, lift the pen to another part of the sketch and keep up the pace. When you're ready and have done your research, add an index, color keys, add scales, notes. Try to estimate size, distance, or space. Give diagrams a try and learn a little about the process of how land comes to look as it does. Add notes, keys, and scales for estimating size, distance, or space. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next episode for geology and geography in the land journals.